Hello there! In this episode I'm going to show you how to combine several morph dials that you've dialed in on your Genesis figure into a single slider. And that's really helpful if you've crafted a custom character out of existing morphs and, including aging morphs and anything you've got installed, anything that requires you to dial something in on the Genesis figure and send it over to Hexagon and turn it into a single slider. Now this is possible with and without Hexagon. With Hexagon is a little bit easier, but it could also be a little bit, tricky because Hexagon is a bit temperamental. So there's another video on my channel that explains how to do this without Hexagon. This is the version with Hexagon. Once we're done with this, you can literally uninstall the products that made up the original morph sliders because you now have a single thing. Let's have a look at how it works. So I've got my regular Genesis 8 basic female figure here. I've loaded that via the Smart Content tab, and I'll head over with that figure selected into the Parameters tab. Under Actor, you can use anything you like. I'm going to use some full body morphs here, perhaps a little bit of Olympia, and a little bit of heavy body, and a little bit of a pair figure. There, Podgy special character. So that's my custom character. You can use as many morphs as you like from as many products as you like, just as long as you shape the character into something that you want to make. And now all you need to do is head over to File, Send to Hexagon. When you do that for the first time, DAZ will ask you where is Hexagon installed, but you only have to do that once. Then Hexagon is being launched. If you have Hexagon open already, you'd think your project would open in that Hexagon, but no, it just opens a second instance of Hexagon on your computer. It's just how it works. It's just, one of those things. You don't have to know anything about Hexagon, luckily, so don't get scared by the menu. It's just, we literally won't do anything in here except for go and say File, Send to DAZ Studio. That is literally all. You don't have any items selected, so I suppose it's saying, would you like to select something? I think it'll work without it. Let's just try. Let's go say yes. And we just minimize Hexagon and go back into DAZ Studio where we should have a morph that's being created. That, of course, doesn't work because Hexagon is a little bit temperamental. Let's go and select something like our Genesis 8 female figure and try that again. File, Send to DAZ Studio. And it would be nice if Hexagon would tell us that it's finished, but of course it doesn't do that. You just go back into DAZ Studio where we get this dialog now. And that says, hey, I'm Hexagon, I'm creating a morph here, or DAZ Studio is going to create that morph for us. There's several options here that by default it just says create a morph. That's what we want. Then the group path is where your morph is going to end up in the hierarchy. I'll show you where that is in a moment and how to change that. And there's also the morph name. So I'm going to leave this as the default, and I'm going to show you how to change that in a minute. All we need to do is hit accept, override existing morph. If you already have one and you've tweaked it, you just hit accept, and that is literally it. So where is that morph now, and how do we see if it's working? Well, before we do this, let's head over and go to currently used, and this is where all my morph sliders are now dialed up. I can reset them either with that little cog icon and just hit reset. I can also meticulously dial this back to 0 if I wanted to, or most dials work by alt clicking on the slider. So alt and click, that'll also set that back to 0. I'm just doing that so that we can see the basic Genesis 8 figure again. So then I can head over again under the Parameters tab, under the Morphs folder here, and in it I'll have this thing called Hexagon Bridge, and in that I have a thing called My Morph, and that is what I've just created. So now if I dial that up to 100% and I go to currently used, the only thing I'm really using is My Morph. I'm not using anything else. And that's kind of cool. That's exactly what we want. So none of the other products are now necessary on my system anymore in order to create that basic body shape. And that was kind of fairly easy. I'll show you a couple of things here. So one thing that is immediately springing to mind is that I can dial this slider from 100% to minus 100%, and that doesn't look good. That gives me nightmares. I don't want that to happen. So let me make sure I can only dial it from 0 to 100, and that is happening on this little cog icon here under parameter settings. There's this thing that says minimum minus 100 and maximum 100%. And there's also use limits here. So the minimum I'll just set to 0 and the maximum is set to 100. And if I hit accept, then I can dial that slider to 0 and to 100, and that is it. You can do other things here. You can say, I don't want to use percent at all. I want to use a 0 to 1 thing. That is also possible. So 0 is nothing and 1 is 100%. You can also say, I'd like for my default value, I don't like 0 as my default value. I'd like something like, I don't know, 50% in the middle, or I'd like the slider to be on. In that case, you can just go and say, let's say we want to switch it on by default, then the default will be set to 1. Hit accept, and then now 1 is kind of the gray thing, and anything that deviates from 1 is going to be light gray. And you also have that functionality that when you alt click onto your slider, it'll go to the default value, which is now 1. Now the other thing is, of course, I don't really want to have something that's called Morphs Hexagon Bridge my morph. I'd like for that to be called something else. So you head over to parameter settings again, and this is where you can set that. So my morph is my character name, so I'll call that my character, and perhaps I'll go and copy that into the label as well. And the path is literally where you'd like for that to be. So I could put that under people. I'm maybe just going to put that under people. And if you type a /, you can put a category into an existing folder. So people already exists. It has several folders already. I could say people J, and my character would be under there. So if I hit accept here, then things will kind of collapse here because it doesn't really exist anymore. So under people, I now have J, and under J, I have special character with those attributes that I've just copied in there or turned in there from Hexagon. So the thing is, though, if I were to delete my figure now, this morph would also be gone. So this hasn't quite saved yet. So I need to do that in order for it to, come back. So let's do that with the figure still selected. Head over to File, Save As, Support Asset, Morph Asset. And that'll bring up the whole hierarchy of anything and everything that is now makes up this character here. It also gives me an asset directory. This is where the morph will be saved. If you had multiple directories, you can pick the one that you want to save this in. So these are the equivalents to the DAZ libraries that you've got installed on your system. Could be on external drives. I'm going to use my default library here, my DAZ 3D library. Vendor name, that's me. And product name, that is technically, if you were to share this morph, this is what your product will be called. I'm just going to leave that on product and just show you the rest of it. So my thing was under people, that is under the Genesis 8 female. There's people down here. Under people, we have J, and there's my special character morph. So you enable that, you tick that box, and that means only this will be saved as its own asset. You can compress the files, it doesn't really matter. Let's save a tiny bit of space, and then you hit accept, and that's that. This morph is now kind of locked in and saved with your library. So if I were to go and delete that figure, just to prove a point, and I'll bring that figure in again, then my slider is still going to be there, and I can dial it up just like I want it to. Well, there we go. It's actually set to 1 by default, so that's why my morph comes in. So again, you can change that in the library. So under parameters, there it is under Genesis 8 female people J, special character set to on by default. Kind of what you want if you want to use a particular type of morphs with a character. Now, there's also a way to delete that morph from your library again, but I'm going to save that for another video. That is technically how you do that with Hexagon. If you don't want to use Hexagon, watch out for another video on my channel that shows you how to do this just with DAZ Studio. It's a little bit more tricky, a few more steps to go through, a little bit more convoluted and complicated, but I thought I'd share this with you all the same. If you like this video, then of course, please share it with friends, family, and total strangers, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.